Claire adjusted the final candle on the long oak dining table, its golden flame trembling in the dim room. The scent of rosemary lamb drifted from the oven, mingling with the polished wood and faint perfume she had sprayed across the curtains. Everything had to be perfect tonight. 40 wasn't just another year, it was a milestone. Her husband deserved the celebration, and she would give it to him. She whispered the words to herself like a mantra. The perfect wife, the perfect marriage. Her fingers lingered on the rim of a crystal glass, noticing how they shook. It was nothing, she told herself. Excitement, anticipation, not nerves. Yet a familiar shadow crept into her chest. The nagging question that sometimes surfaced late at night, when David rolled away from her in bed. Did he still love her with the same intensity? She quickly smothered the thought, smoothing the silk dress she had chosen. The one he once said made her look like a secret. Claire moved through the house in purposeful rhythm, checking, adjusting, rehearsing the smile she would wear when David walked through the door. Her reflection in the hallway mirror looked elegant, but slightly haunted. She forced brightness into her eyes. The cake, layered with rich chocolate and strawberries, sat waiting in the fridge. She imagined his smile when he saw it, wide and genuine. The smile she had fallen for 2 decades ago. That memory alone kept her steady. Tonight was about him, about them, about the life they had built together. The doorbell rang, jolting her. Not David, he would use his key. Guests arriving early. She opened the door to a chorus of cheerful greetings from friends carrying wrapped boxes. Their chatter filled the air, brushing away her momentary unease. Claire ushered them inside with practiced warmth, though her eyes darted toward the clock. She wanted him here first before anyone else. Her gaze returned to the empty hallway, the unlit porch outside. David was late. She poured wine for the guests, smiling at their jokes, while inside a knot of unease began to tighten. She told herself it was nothing, traffic, work, the usual. Still, she kept glancing at the door, waiting for the moment when her husband would arrive, smiling, as though nothing in the world could threaten what they had. But the longer the silence stretched, the more her heart whispered a truth she refused to acknowledge. Something was off. David leaned back in his leather office chair, glancing at the time on his watch. Later than he wanted, Claire would be fussing at home, lighting candles and polishing glasses, determined to make every detail shine. A small smile touched his lips at the thought of her energy, her devotion. She never seemed to tire of giving, but the smile faltered when his phone buzzed. He reached for it casually, careful to keep his movements slow, unhurried. Though the office was empty now, the screen lit up, a new message. Lena, you promised tonight. Don't disappoint me. For a moment, the air in the room thickened. David pressed the phone face down on the desk, staring at the darkened surface as though it might absorb the weight of his thoughts. He ran a hand through his hair, forcing a grin back onto his face. The grin he wore so easily. The one people described as charming. That grin was his armor. A knock sounded at the door, his assistant peeking in to wish him a happy birthday. David laughed, thanked her, even cracked a joke. She left smiling as she always did. No one ever suspected anything behind that easy confidence. No one ever saw the restless guilt crawling under his skin. He picked up the phone again, thumb hovering over the reply. He typed 3 words, erased them, typed again, and finally left it blank. He couldn't let Lena control the night. Not tonight. Claire deserved her celebration. Still, the thought lingered. Lena never waited quietly. She had a way of appearing, stepping out of shadows when he least expected. Her eyes sharp with need and accusation. David slipped the phone into his pocket, grabbed his jacket, and checked his reflection in the darkened window. The husband's smile returned, polished and convincing. No one would see the cracks but him. As he walked out into the night, his phone buzzed again. He ignored it, choosing instead to picture Claire's face when he stepped through the door. But behind that vision, another image pressed harder. Lena's knowing eyes. The house buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses by the time David finally arrived. Claire hurried to the door, her smile polished but edged with relief. He kissed her cheek, warm yet rushed as though fulfilling a duty. Guests swarmed him with greetings, and he performed effortlessly. Charming, witty, the man everyone admired. Claire watched him closely, searching for the warmth she had once felt in his eyes. It flickered there, but only faintly, hidden beneath the polished surface. She told herself she was imagining things, that nerves were twisting reality into shadows. Then the front door opened again. A hush swept the room, not silence, but the subtle shift when someone unexpected enters. She stood framed in the doorway, crimson dress hugging her frame, dark curls tumbling over her shoulders. Her lips curved in a smile too sharp, too knowing. "Sorry I'm late," Lena said smoothly, her voice a low melody. Traffic was awful. David's glass nearly slipped from his hand. He covered it with a laugh, introducing her as an old colleague who happened to be in town. Guests welcomed her with cheerful curiosity, folding her into conversation without hesitation. Only Claire saw the tension etched into David's jaw, the way his eyes darted toward Lena, as though begging her to behave. Claire's chest tightened. She had never heard this woman's name before, yet something in the air between them spoke volumes. Lena's hand brushed David's arm when no one else was watching. Her gaze lingered too long, her smile carrying the weight of something unsaid. Claire stood by the cake, forcing herself to laugh with the others, though her knuckles whitened around the knife. The celebration swelled. Music, chatter, toasts, but beneath it pulsed an undercurrent Claire could not shake. At one point, Lena caught her eyes across the room. The smile widened, not of courtesy but of possession. It was a challenge, silent yet deafening. Claire's heart stumbled. The perfect wife. The perfect marriage. Was that what everyone else saw? Or were they blind to the fracture opening beneath her feet? She told herself she would not ruin the night. Not tonight. But the questions burned too hot to ignore. As the candles were lit and guests cheered for David's wish, Claire's smile trembled. She could not stop wondering, who exactly was Lena? And why did her husband look so afraid? The last guests drifted out into the night, leaving behind the faint smell of wine and the echo of laughter that now felt hollow. Claire closed the door softly, leaning against it for a moment. The house was quiet at last, but the silence pressed heavier than the noise. She turned to find David stacking plates in the kitchen, his back rigid. For a moment, she simply watched him, the man she had loved for half her life. Then the image of Lena's crimson dress flared again, and words slipped out before she could stop them. Who was she? David froze, then turned with an easy smile that looked almost rehearsed. "Lena, just an old colleague." "Surprised me as much as it did you." Claire studied his face. "You seemed uncomfortable." He laughed, dismissing her concern with a wave of his hand. "Claire, you're overthinking. You always do this. Read too much into little things." His tone softened, almost pitying. "You've been stressed about tonight. It's natural to imagine shadows where there aren't any." Her stomach tightened. She looked at you like what? He interrupted sharply, then immediately softened his voice again. "Sweetheart, don't ruin a perfect night with paranoia. You're tired." "We both are." The word paranoia stung. Claire felt herself retreat, second-guessing her instincts. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was letting nerves twist her perception. David stepped close, pressing a quick kiss to her forehead, too brief to carry tenderness. "Go to bed," he murmured. "I'll clean up." She forced a smile, though unease throbbed beneath it. "Good night." As she walked upstairs, she told herself to let it go, to believe him. Yet when she glanced back, she caught him standing still in the kitchen, staring at nothing, his jaw clenched. Claire slipped into the bedroom, heart pounding. For the first time, she wondered if the marriage she had always believed unshakable was balanced on lies. And as she reached for her phone on the nightstand, a new thought whispered, if he was hiding something, she would find it. The bedroom was cloaked in shadows, the only light a thin strip of moon filtering through the curtains. Claire lay motionless on her side of the bed, listening to the faint clatter of dishes downstairs. Her heart thudded against the pillow as she reached for David's phone resting on the nightstand. She hesitated, fingers trembling above the screen. She had never done this before. Trust had always been her vow, the unspoken promise of their marriage. But Lena's smile, Lena's hand on his arm, it gnawed at her until silence became unbearable. She unlocked the phone easily. David had never bothered changing the code. The familiarity of that detail almost hurt more than anything else. A stream of unread messages glowed against the darkness. Her eyes scanned, breath catching at the name. Lena. Claire opened the thread. "Lena, I wore the red dress for you." Did she notice? Lena, you said you'd tell her soon. Lena, stop hiding. I'm not a secret anymore. Her throat tightened as the words blurred. Each line was a knife, slicing through years of dinners, vacations, whispered promises in the night. She scrolled further, stomach twisting at the intimacy written in hurried texts, private jokes, longing words, fragments of desire that once belonged to her alone. Claire pressed a hand against her mouth, choking back a sob. Anger surged, fierce and sharp, but beneath it lay something colder, clarity. The truth was here, undeniable, breathing between every line of text. She wanted to storm downstairs, to throw the phone at his chest and demand answers. She wanted to scream until the walls cracked. But another voice whispered in her mind, steady, calculating, not yet. If she confronted him now, he would twist it, dismiss it, make her doubt again. He was too good at that. No, she thought. She would wait, watch, learn. She placed the phone back exactly as it had been and slid beneath the covers. When David entered minutes later, smiling faintly as if nothing had happened, she matched his smile with one of her own. But inside, her decision had been made. She would no longer be the perfect wife. She would be the silent watcher. And David would never see it coming. The cafe was dim, tucked into a quiet corner of the city, its windows fogged by the drizzle outside. David slid into the booth opposite Lena, removing his jacket with a weary sigh. He hadn't wanted to meet here, hadn't wanted to meet at all. But Lena had insisted. She leaned forward, her crimson nails tapping the edge of her coffee cup. You promised me, David. Her voice was low, almost tender, but her eyes carried fire. He forced a smile, glancing around to be sure no one nearby was listening. Lena, tonight wasn't the place. You blindsided me showing up like that. Her lips curled. I'm tired of being the secret. I wore the dress you like. She saw it. She saw us. Don't pretend she didn't. David's jaw tightened. You're imagining things. No, she said sharply, voice cutting through the hum of conversation. You said after your birthday you'd tell her. You said there would be a future for us. I won't be strung along anymore. The words pressed against him like a cage. He rubbed his temples, leaning closer. Do you understand what you're asking? Claire has given me everything. Our life, it's complicated. Complicated? Lena's laugh was bitter. You can't keep playing both sides. Either you leave her or I tell her myself. David's chest constricted, anger rising. Don't threaten me. I'm not threatening, she whispered, leaning in until her perfume enveloped him. I'm demanding what you promised. The control slipped from him then. His voice hardened, his hand slamming against the table loud enough to make nearby heads turn. Enough, Lena. Her smile didn't falter. If anything, it widened. There it is, she murmured. The real you. Ugly, desperate, afraid. How long before she sees it too? David swallowed, pulling back, suddenly aware of the eyes on them. He shoved bills onto the table and stood, his hands trembling. Lena watched him go, her expression unreadable. But in her eyes gleamed victory, not fear. Claire hadn't slept. The messages, the crimson dress, David's hollow reassurances. All of it churned inside her like a storm. By afternoon, she found herself standing on the porch with a bottle of wine clutched in one hand. She needed company, someone outside the circle of lies. Rachel, the neighbor 2 houses down, answered the knock. Tall, steady, with a calm presence that seemed to anchor every room. Rachel smiled warmly. Claire, what a surprise. Thought you might like a glass, Claire said, lifting the bottle with a practiced grin. Soon they were seated at Rachel's kitchen table, the wine breathing between them. Conversation began lightly, gardening, recipes, neighborhood gossip. But Claire's hand shook as she poured. The red liquid trembled over the rim, splashing onto the counter. Rachel noticed. Her gaze lingered, sharp yet kind. Rough week? Claire laughed too quickly. Just tired. The party, you know. 40 is a big one. Rachel said, swirling her glass. I've seen a lot of tired in my line of work. But yours looks different, Claire froze. Your line of work? Rachel set her glass down. Detective. Homicide, technically. I don't usually bring it up at wine hour. Her tone was casual, but her eyes stayed fixed on Claire, observant. Claire's throat tightened. She forced a smile. That must be heavy. It can be, Rachel leaned back. People carry secrets in their bodies, Claire. You'd be surprised how often they show, even when unspoken. For a heartbeat, Claire thought Rachel could see straight through her trembling hands, through the knot of dread she carried. She quickly deflected, asking about Rachel's cases, and the detective obliged with vague anecdotes. Still, that piercing look returned whenever Claire's smile slipped. As dusk crept through the window, Claire excused herself, thanking Rachel for the company. Stepping into the cool evening air, she realized her chest felt both lighter and heavier. Lighter because someone had noticed. Heavier because Rachel's profession meant danger if Claire's suspicions ever became reality. And reality was closing in fast. The storm broke just after midnight. Rain lashing the windows, thunder rattling the frame of the house. Claire sat in the living room, lights dimmed, a glass of untouched wine sweating in her hand. David had been pacing for an hour, restless, phone buzzing every few minutes until finally he snapped and silenced it. The knock on the door came sharp and insistent, cutting through the storm. Claire's heart lurched. David froze. "Don't," he whispered. But it was too late. Claire was already on her feet. She opened the door to Lena, drenched from the rain, hair plastered to her face, the crimson dress clinging like a second skin. Lightning flashed behind her, casting her in something almost spectral. "David," Lena said, stepping inside without invitation. Her eyes flicked to Claire. "I couldn't wait any longer." Claire's breath caught. "What is this?" David's voice cracked. "Lena, leave, not here. Not tonight." But Lena ignored him, circling into the room, water dripping onto the polished floor. "You've kept me in the shadows long enough." "She deserves to know." "Know what?" Claire demanded, voice trembling. The room filled with overlapping shouts, David insisting nothing was happening, Lena insisting everything was, and Claire, caught in the storm between them, demanding the truth. David reached for Lena's arm, trying to pull her back toward the door, but she jerked free. A glass on the coffee table toppled, shattering across the floor, shards scattering like sparks. "Don't touch me," Lena screamed. "Stop it!" Claire cried, clutching her chest. The thunder outside roared, as though echoing the chaos within. David shoved Lena again, harder this time. She stumbled, colliding with the table, sending another glass crashing. In the same instant, Claire lunged forward, reaching out to steady her, but the movement twisted into disaster. A sharp cry split the air, the sound of glass crunching underfoot. Then silence. Except for the storm, Claire stood frozen, breath shallow, staring down at the floor. Blood was spreading fast across the wood, glistening dark under the low light. For a moment, she couldn't tell whose it was, Lena's, David's, or even her own. David's face drained of color. "Oh God," his voice broke into a rasp. "What have we done?" The storm raged on outside, but inside the house a different kind of storm had begun, one that no door could keep out, no lie could contain. The storm quieted, leaving only the steady drum of rain against the roof. Inside, the silence was unbearable. Claire knelt on the floor, her breath shallow, her hands trembling inches from the pool of blood spreading across the wood. Lena's body lay twisted, her hair sticky against her cheek, eyes half-lidded but vacant. Claire's chest tightened. The copper tang of blood filled her nose. She wanted to scream, to call for help, but her throat locked around the words. David crouched beside her, his own hands slick and shaking. "Listen to me," he whispered hoarsely. "This was an accident. Do you understand? An accident." Claire's gaze darted to him. His eyes were wide, frantic, almost wild. "We have to call someone." "No." His voice cracked like a whip. Then softer, pleading, "Claire, think. If you call, it's over. For me, for us. They'll twist it, they'll say I meant to hurt her. You know how it looks," her mind raced. The truth was obvious. Lena had come here, there had been shouting, and now she was gone. But beneath the horror, another voice whispered. The same voice that had kept her silent for years. The one that wanted to protect the fragile illusion of their marriage. David reached for her hand, gripping it tightly. "We can survive this. We've survived everything. If you love me, you'll keep quiet. Just trust me." Claire's lips parted, but no words came. She looked down at Lena again, the red dress ruined, her presence already fading into a terrible memory. Claire's stomach turned. This wasn't survival. This was betrayal stacked upon betrayal. Yet when David pressed a quick, trembling kiss against her temple, she didn't pull away. Go upstairs, he urged. Wash your hands. I'll handle this. Claire rose unsteadily, every movement heavy, mechanical. At the doorway, she glanced back, David kneeling by the body, whispering to himself as if rehearsing a story. Her legs carried her up the stairs, but her mind lingered below, torn between two truths: the husband she once loved and the justice Lena would never have. The silence that followed was not peace. It was the beginning of something darker. The knock at the door jolted Claire from her stupor. She sat rigid on the edge of the bed, hands still damp from scrubbing, her nails raw where she had tried to claw away the memory of blood. Downstairs, David's voice hissed up the staircase. Stay quiet. Another knock, sharper this time. Claire crept halfway down, heart pounding. She could see him through the banister, David opening the door with his practiced smile firmly in place. But the sight of who stood outside made her stomach twist. Detective Rachel. Evening, Rachel said, rain dripping from her coat. Sorry to bother you. We had a call about shouting. Neighbors worried. Thought I'd check in. David's smile widened. Storm probably carried the sound wrong. Just a birthday party. Got a little loud, that's all. Rachel's eyes flicked past him into the dimly lit living room. Claire froze as she realized the broken glass had been cleared, the rug carefully repositioned. David had worked fast. Too fast, I see, Rachel murmured, her tone neutral. She adjusted her stance, peering inside. Mind if I come in for a moment? David hesitated, then stepped aside. Of course. Claire descended slowly, forcing her legs to obey. Her hands trembled, so she tucked them behind her back. Rachel's gaze landed on her immediately, sharp and assessing. You all right, Claire? The detective asked gently. Yes, Claire said too quickly. Just tired. Long night? Rachel tilted her head as though weighing the words. Funny thing about long nights, they usually leave traces. Broken glasses, raised voices. Things like that, David chuckled smoothly. Detective, you're making it sound like a crime scene. Really, it was just friends, too much wine. You know how it is. Rachel studied him, then Claire, her eyes narrowing slightly. Claire felt sweat beat at her temple. Her fingers itched to reach for Rachel, to spill everything. But David's presence beside her was suffocating, his hand resting casually at the small of her back. An anchor. Or a chain. Finally, Rachel gave a thin smile. All right, if that's all. But if you need anything, you know where to find me. As she left, Claire's lungs ached with the breath she had been holding. Rachel knew. The front door clicked shut behind Rachel, leaving a silence that was louder than thunder. Claire stood rooted to the floor, her pulse hammering in her ears. She felt Rachel's eyes still lingering, even from across the street, as if the detective had left a piece of herself inside the house. David broke the quiet first, his voice low and strained. You held it together, good. That's what we need to do now. Hold it together. Claire turned to him slowly. His face was calm, but his eyes darted with restless calculation. She saw the cracks in his performance now, the way his charm was stitched together with desperation. David. Her voice trembled. How long? He blinked, feigning confusion. How long what? How long has she been in your life? His jaw tightened, then softened into the practiced smile she had once mistaken for love. Claire, you're tired. You're letting her get in your head. Don't let Rachel plant seeds where there's nothing. But the words rang false. They always had. And suddenly, Claire's mind pulled her backward. Through years of business trips with odd gaps, hushed phone calls in the middle of the night, unexplained receipts buried in drawers. All the excuses she had accepted, all the doubts she had smothered to keep their marriage intact. The truth had been there all along. She had simply chosen blindness, her hands clenched at her sides. You promised me honesty. You promised me loyalty. Was any of it real? David's mask slipped. His eyes flashed with irritation before softening again. Claire, everything I did was for us. Even her, it was nothing compared to you. Don't throw us away now. Not after what's happened. Her stomach turned at the word us. There was no us. Only his lies stacked high enough to bury her beneath them. Upstairs, the clock ticked relentlessly. Each second stretched, pulling her further from the man she thought she knew. David stepped closer, lowering his voice. If you break now, we lose everything. You hear me? Everything. Claire met his gaze, but this time she didn't look away. For the first time in years, she saw him not as her husband, but as a stranger. And with that clarity came the realization. Survival would demand truth no matter the cost. The sirens split the night, their wails slicing through the quiet street like knives. Red and blue lights flickered across the walls of the living room, illuminating the blood-stained rug, the empty wine glasses, the shattered remains of what once passed for a home. Claire sat on the sofa, her body rigid, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her dress was rumpled, damp with sweat, though she felt no heat. Everything inside her had gone cold. Rachel stood nearby, speaking quietly with two uniformed officers. Their eyes kept flicking toward Claire, toward the still form covered now by a white sheet on the floor. Lena reduced a silence to evidence. The mistress who had been both threat and truth. David, hands cuffed behind his back, was being led toward the door, his face twisted in fury and disbelief. But when his eyes found Claire's, his voice broke into desperate pleading. "Claire, tell them. It was an accident. You know me, you know me." She stared at him, her lips parting but no words emerging. She had known him once, or thought she had. Now all she saw was a stranger shackled by the weight of his own lies. "Claire!" he shouted again, struggling against the officers. His voice echoed in the storm-damp night as they forced him into the waiting car. Then he was gone. The silence that followed was unbearable. Rachel approached gently, crouching down to meet Claire's vacant gaze. "You did the right thing," she said softly. "You don't have to carry his lies anymore." Claire's throat tightened. A single tear slid down her cheek, though her face remained otherwise still. "The right thing," she repeated as if testing the words. They felt heavy, foreign. Rachel's hand rested briefly on her shoulder. "Justice always costs something. But you're free now, free." The word hollowed her. What was freedom without the man she once loved, without the illusion she had clung to for decades? The truth had set her free, yes, but it had left her stripped, shattered, alone. Through the window, the flashing lights faded into the distance. The house fell into silence once more, except for the ticking of the clock, relentless and cold. Claire looked at the cake still waiting in the fridge, untouched, candles unlit. A 40th birthday meant to mark celebration had instead become an epitaph. Between husband, wife, and mistress, the only thing left standing was blood, and the echo of promises that had never been real.